Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars. Hello there, and welcome to What Does Star Wars Mean to You? I'm Dave, and I'm an original trilogy kid.
And I'm Elora, I'm a prequel trilogy kid.
And together, we're taking the hate out of the debate by focusing on a certain point of view. Yours. Every 2 weeks, we have a new guest to explore how Star Wars impacted their life. And then we have this, the episodes between episode minisodes, where we get a chance to talk about something that was important to our guests, as well as share what Star Wars means to us. So if you're listening to the show, please like and subscribe to us, and also give us a rating, like 5 stars. Give us 5 Star Wars.
I mean, that would be amazing.
Because it really helps get the word out there. If you want to get in on the conversation, you can find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U.
Yeah.
Very easy.
We post funny things. You should come follow us.
Yes. So last week, we spoke to Dan of Star Wars Centralized. He's on X or Twitter, and his handle is at @scentralized. And he's a big fan of all the novels and comics, and it's a really great interview.
It was really fun.
And during the interview, we asked him if there was one Legends book that really changed his point of view of the movies. And he said that the novelization of Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover was that book. Now, Mike Chen, the author of Brotherhood, and Adam Christopher, author of Shadow of the Sith, on previous interviews, both praised that novelization as well. So, as a part of our own Vader month, which probably could turn into Vader year,
Easily.
we decided to read the book and see what impact it had on us.
Mm-hmm.
So, even though it's the novelization of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, it is also the middle book in a trilogy about the end of the Republic and the eventual rise of Darth Vader himself. Thank you, Dan, for informing us of that.
Yeah.
That sounded sarcastic. Not intentional.
He genuinely means it, yeah.
Yeah. The books in order include Labyrinth of Evil by James Luceno, Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover, and The Rise of Lord Vader by James Luceno. The first 2 were released in 2005, with the final book being released in 2008. But in 2014, all 3 books became part of the Legends series as Disney deemed it no longer canonical, which is, I find really particularly funny because it is literally the adaptation of a movie that's totally within canon.
Especially the last 4 chapters. They're almost verbatim, scene by scene.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
And I get it, because after reading it, it does have so much more information in it.
I will say, though, I thought maybe a good scene setting for our conversation, because one thing I noticed immediately on the first page, the preface, is how Stover was setting such a visual scene throughout the chapters, really trying to capture what you might experience as you were watching the film, really painting a beautiful narrative image. But one thing I loved is he started the book by saying, "A strange thing about stories, though this all happened so long ago and so far away that words cannot describe the time or the distance, it is also happening right now, right here." And I thought, what a perfect, not only encapsulation of us going back to these works from that were also written quite a few years ago, but also just the story in itself, because he's absolutely right. There's so many aspects of Star Wars, the greater story, both in Legends and in canon, that is so applicable to our modern world today, and the things people are even experiencing in their own lives, and the things that we're seeing in politics as they play out. And so I just thought that would be a really nice way to open this podcast and set the scene, is to read that.
I completely agree. And what amazes me about this book is, even though it's not canon anymore, and I'm not going to dwell on that, it's just, I think it's an interesting kind of...
There's a slight bee in the bonnet over that, we can tell, yeah.
But I feel like it sets up so much of what we're going to see in the next 10 or 15 years of Star Wars entertainment. Like, it felt so much like an inspiration for the Clone Wars. It really captured Darth Vader's turn. Or let me say, Anakin's turn to Darth Vader. I think on previous episodes, we had talked about how his turn was a little clunky. It feels a bit out of the blue. But this book, from the very beginning, is like, it takes everything that's on screen and then expands the emotions of it. And I thought one of the things that Stover used a lot that I thought was really effective was he would start a chapter or a paragraph with, this is how it feels to be so-and-so.
It was so impactful. Yeah.
Right? And it's like, this is how it feels to be Anakin. This is how it feels to be Obi-Wan. This is how it feels to be Dooku. You know, it was so from their particular point of view. And it exposes so much that I think you can argue is in the movie almost as like from 20,000 miles up. Yeah. You kind of have to really dig to catch the
you see it on your 5th rewatch. Yeah.
Yes. And here, I think one of the most important things this book does is establish Anakin's relationships with so many different people and what it meant and what was driving him. And one of and I'm sorry, I'm talking. I'm like, blah, blah, blah.
No. Go. I'll fill in as I feel the need.
I really loved how the imminent death of Padme felt like the most important thing to Anakin. Like, there was nothing else. And so when he gets to the point where he's like, okay, Palps, I will join you so I can figure out how to say Padme, you're like, yes, do it. You kind of, and you don't really root for him to be like, go Darth Vader.
But you understand the impulse that's there.
Yes.
What I loved about it too, and I felt like that piece of it was always really clear in the films, even though it too kind of felt like maybe a bit rushed or just the switch from going to fearing the death of Padme to then killing younglings being maybe a bit extreme in such a short amount of time, screen time.
Yeah.
Literally, like, as soon as page 25, like right at the beginning of the book, you're already getting inside the mind of Anakin and how much fear he lives with on the daily. He's like afraid of almost everything. The one that really stuck out is there's a conversation between him and Obi that I can't recall if he's reflecting on it or if it's happening in real time, but he talks about how his realization that like stars can die.
Yes.
And Obi's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's why Jedis form no attachments. If you hold on to something past its set time, like it's your selfish desires to the Force so that's like motivating that. And he's kind of trying to, mentor. But all that Anakin is hearing is that like things are going to end. There's this like urgency and it makes a lot of sense when you think about his background and his upbringing and the fact he was a child slave and, the story of his mother. Like, all of that is, I mean, he's just such a well-written character in essence because all of that's so real.
Yes. You really feel his pain.
Yeah, you really feel his pain. And there's other sprinklings of him also kind of like reflecting on like sensing the powers of the dark side that he suspected being so strong as a boy. But yeah, really, you're dead on. It's the relationship with Padme is really kind of that linchpin to all of this. It's really great in terms of getting into the mind of Anakin. But I also thought it was really interesting how there was sprinklings of like getting in the heads of people like Palpatine or Dooku as well. Yes. And I don't want to jump ahead from where you want to go next.
No, we can go anywhere.
When Anakin kills Dooku, his internal monologue is like so self-sacrificing, like for the greater of his mission. He's seeing this as like he has only existed for this moment. Like to be the victim of Anakin Skywalker's first cold-blooded murder was almost like an honor and a privilege. Yeah, it added so much more context to the scene I've seen probably 100 times in the film. Yes. It was interesting psychologically from his perspective.
Yeah, and it's also kind of interesting to see how manipulative the Palpatine is and how manipulative Darth Sidious is. He sets, because at one point Dooku says, But forgive me, Master, but Kenobi having fallen to my blade, are you certain Skywalker will ever accept my orders? You must admit that his biography offers little confidence that he is capable of obedience at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of interesting that the Emperor has no intention of
not at all.
Of Anakin reporting to Dooku.
No. There's a lot of exposition in, Obi calling him out on his dangerous thoughts. Padme also calls him out on having dangerous thoughts throughout their conversations in the book. There's a lot more exposition that takes place in their relationship that you wouldn't normally get from just watching the film. There's a really pivotal.
Oh yeah, pivotal.
There's a really pivotal scene in the book where Padme's pleading with him and basically saying, like, the Jedi are your family. And we're seeing him creep further and further and further into isolating himself out of his anger, out of his fear, out of his feeling of betrayal. He's not getting the respect he thinks he deserves from the council, and all the things that are involved. And Obi is feeling remorseful that they do kind of have to do this to him, lie to him, put Padme in a position where she's lying to him. There's just so much more there in terms of like the seeds of doubt that are being planted in Anakin's mind, his distrust of the people that are supposed to be considered his family. And then there's Palpatine, who is whispering in his ear as a quote unquote friend the whole time, basically, continuing to plant those seeds and saying that, like, not even the Jedi know all that there is to know about the Force. Like, no mortal mind can, essentially like painting himself as like some deity. To save him from his nightmares.
I'm your only friend, Anakin.
Yes, he really makes him feel like that. And it's there's so much more written. And I mean, that's why books have always been so great. It's because you can go deeper than you can in a film. But I've talked too much. Tell me what you're thinking.
I wish Revenge of the Sith was a 4-hour movie so that you could get these moments in there. I understand why they shortcut some of it. Let's have the action and the fun. I mean, it is an incredibly fun movie with a lot of great action. It's just these like little story bits really add so much. I thought Palpatine, like, he is so warm throughout that book.
Yes.
And almost loving. And you see why Anakin turns to him over and over again. I think it's interesting that you had mentioned how Anakin felt stressed and like he was in the middle between Palpatine as Chancellor and the Jedi Council as trying to figure out who the Sith Lord is within the Chancellor's circle. You also get this sense of that the dark side is moving things. Like at the beginning of the book, when they rescue Palpatine, it hints at the fact that Palpatine's pushing them to go to the bridge, and everything they tried to do. They even say there's a line that's something like, the Force just wasn't going the way they needed it to.
Yeah, they did say that.
And Obi-Wan was like, well, it looks like you got your way, Palpatine. And Palpatine's like, you'll find I often do. And,
yes.
And it's so like, oh my God, you really are manipulating all this. And that's one of those aspects that I really enjoyed in it.
Yeah. Just that piece of it adds so much more dimension to his character as the villain. Highly recommend anyone listening read the book and take the time if they're a fan of the film.
Yeah.
Because there really is so much here that I don't even think we could cover in a single podcast. But you're so right about like that there's so much flattery involved too in terms of coaxing Anakin. At one point, Anakin even recognizes, like once we're in his head again, he kind of recognizes that Palpatine has quote unquote seen into his secret heart. He literally says secret heart. And then ultimately, when he does make the switch, which does in the books essentially play out the same way it does in the film, minus the character exposition that you get, kind of more internal monologue stuff, that he realizes that it actually is as simple as Palpatine's telling him all he has to do is choose the thing he's desired the most, the thing that he wants. Yes. He has to be selfish where the Jedi are selfless. And that whole scene was written so well because he struggles for pages and pages on whether or not he's willing to go there. It is not an immediate fall to the knees by any means.
It truly is. It's a debate in his head throughout. Mm-hmm. And it's also, he really wants to do what he believes is right, but also
yes, there's still a
what
sense
he
of
believes,
justice.
Yeah. And what he believes is right by him.
Mm-hmm. But then there's the selfishness. Yeah.
But there's the selfishness. And that's what he's trying to express to everyone. And everyone around him seems to be saying, why don't you be a spy for Palpatine? Why don't you spy on the Jedi Council? We're going to put you in the middle of this. When really, look, all he wants to do is sit on the couch, drink beer, and watch pod racing. You know? When it comes right down to it, he's like, I don't want this political stuff. I want to go fight Grievous.
But he also wants to be a warrior. Like, he does want to be, he wants respect. But like, there's a lot of desires he has, but it's so human when you know his whole story. Like, of course he would want that. Of course he wants control. Of course he wants respect. Of course he wants to protect the people he loves. And like the Jedi Council, knowing all of this about Anakin and seeing kind of these cracks in the foundation, like, how could they have expected anything else?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of where I felt like towards the end of reading the book was, wow, there's almost like a hubris in not seeing this coming.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of hubris that blinds the council completely.
Yeah.
And one of them is, it feels as though, especially with Mace Windu, I think he's the personification of this, is that
poor guy.
They were angry that this dweeb from Tatooine was the chosen one. No one, like, from Phantom Menace, they were like, yeah, we don't know.
They weren't really sold on that,
Yeah, they didn't really know what it meant, and they weren't interested in trying to figure out Anakin. They were just interested in forcing him to be like them.
So true, yeah.
One of the other things I thought was interesting in the book, and again, it's like, maybe this is in the movies if you really look hard. It's like one of those 3D images, like the 2D, 3D images that you have to stare at and cross your eyes, and then you'll see it. Is how the dark side views the use of the Force and how the light side views the use of the Force. The dark side, and Palpatine does this a lot and says this a lot, is we use the Force as we need it to be used. It is ours to control and to...
They're the masters of their fate kind of thing.
Yes, they're the masters of their fate. And the Jedi are much more like, no, the Force is kind of a river and we jump in and we go with the flow.
Yeah.
And that's why the light side is so much better. And it kind of this very interesting, concrete example of the difference between how the two view the Force.
Yes. No, it's a good case study for that.
The other relationship I thought was super important and really well defined in this was the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Yes.
You really get the sense that Obi-Wan cares so much for Anakin.
So deeply.
Even Obi-Wan admits that he's attached to Anakin.
Yeah, in a way he shouldn't be as a Jedi. Yeah.
Exactly. And so when you get to the moment where Anakin's like, or Obi-Wan is like, Anakin, I'm your brother. I loved you. You were like, yes, he did.
Yeah, he really did.
Really did.
You see so much evidence of, not only in the battle sequences, how he's, looking out for him. You see it in the way he's trying to calm him when his temper gets too high, especially in front of the council. You see it when he talks to Padme.
Yes.
The way he communicates about Anakin with Padme is he's very delicate. He never pushes the line. He knows things he shouldn't know, and he doesn't necessarily go there until he absolutely has to. And there's a lot of respect,
Yeah, never blaming them. Just saying, look, I get it.
What's going on? We gotta fix it.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting worse.
It's getting worse. And then there's that pivotal moment. I wish I'd written down the page number where he sees the change in Anakin's eyes through the tears.
Yes.
As they're getting on the ship. And it was just written so well. You could tell he realized in that moment he lost him. He just wasn't ready to admit it yet. No, there's a lot of love there for sure. That whole dynamic. I mean, I always felt like you saw that in the films. I thought that especially the actors portraying those characters did such a good job of bringing that to the screen, but this was just something else.
Yeah. Well, it really sets it up so that when you get to the payoff, you're like, oh yes, that's exactly what was set up. And I think that's, for me, that's a little bit of an issue with this movie.
Yeah.
When you get to the payoff, you're like, wait, how did we get here? I mean,
yeah, that's fair.
And then there's one other thing. I'm sorry, I keep going. And then there's one other thing.
Keep going. Do it. That's the point.
The other thing is the whole idea of the midichlorians. And I don't think they mention midichlorians in the book. They may.
But I know where you're going because there's that kind of debate as to like, did Palpatine kind of create Anakin from the beginning?
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. In the book, you kind of get that sense because they keep talking about you can manipulate life. And it's not just saving people from death, it's manipulating life.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, he's kind of hinting that.
Yeah. Maybe that's why they don't want it in canon anymore, is because it kind of like indirectly kind of confirms that maybe there's something to that. Yeah.
And that's really, it's just really crazy. One of the things, here's something interesting. It was about what's canon and what's not.
Yeah.
In Revenge of the Sith, they keep making this mention of it's something that happened on Cato Neimoidia. I always pronounce that place wrong.
Go off on Twitter. At least add us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, at least add us. Get us into the algorithm. They keep referring to something that happened on Cato Neimoidia. And that event is what leads to Mike Chen writing the book Brotherhood.
Oh, interesting.
And he took that little like kind of throwaway line, kind of like the bounty hunters on Ord Mantell changed my mind, that kind of line, and made a whole story out of it, which is the first kind of battle out of Attack of the Clones. It's like a direct sequel to Attack of the Clones. Essentially what happened was something that was canon became non-canon and then came right back into canon again because Brotherhood was written, I forget when it was, 2017, 16. It was after, it's part of the Disney canon. Yeah. It's a good read. And possibly, if I can dig it up, I'll throw to Mike Chen's description right now.
Perfect.
And then Matthew Stover's Revenge of the Sith novel, which is like by far, I think, like the best novel in Star Wars, just because of the way that it's written. The myth of the Sun Dragon, I really go into it here, and I'm just building off everything that Stover did here in his book. So those are like the legends things that I tried to bring back in.
One of the things that struck me the most, that scene at the end of Revenge of the Sith, the film, when he kind of is like coming up from the mechanical hospital bed as Darth Vader, right? He takes like his first steps as Darth Vader, essentially, his first breath. That scene's very impactful. It's so well done. But reading from the perspective of this is how it feels to be Anakin Skywalker forever from that moment.
Yes.
I actually, I feel like I need to read the first 3 lines. Yes. Can I do that?
Yes, okay. You do. Yes, you do.
This is how it feels to be Anakin Skywalker forever. The first dawn of light in your universe brings pain. The light burns you. It will always burn you. Part of you will always lie upon black glass sand beside a lake of fire while flames chew upon your flesh. And then it kind of continues on about how, basically every breath is harsh, everything scrapes every nerve raw, and you cannot stop it, and you can never slow it down.
Yes.
And I'm speechless because there's so much there. One, and then he kind of goes into having this inner dialogue where he kind of accepts that this is his fate. He's done this to himself. He needs to continue down this path. But I had always known from the films and from talking the fandom that, a lot of Darth Vader's armor was designed to keep him in a state of pain so that he would stay angry. That's known. But to just, see it written from that perspective, getting ahead to what I know you're going to ask, which is what did this book mean to me in terms of the greater Star Wars universe? I, for the first time, felt sympathy for Darth Vader.
Yes. Yeah.
And for Anakin. In a way that I hadn't before. I've always had sympathy for Anakin, the character, and because his story is quite tragic. But Darth Vader, the villain, I had so much more of an understanding. and I felt sorry for him. You feel sorry for everyone at the end of this book except Palpatine, but you feel sorry for everyone.
yes, that's so true.
I just had to read that because it was so impactful. Yeah.
Well, we may have talked about this a little bit, but that idea that Anakin and Vader are not connected. Like, I don't feel like, I feel like there's a hard enter new paragraph where Anakin dies and Vader lives.
Yeah.
But this, in that moment you just read, is the moment where I was like, oh, this is Anakin. And in that paragraph, actually, or near it, around that paragraph.
Yeah, in that your monologue, yeah.
And there's one blazing moment in which you finally understand that there was no dragon, that there was no Vader, that there was only you, only Anakin Skywalker. And so you get that sense of like, he's going to live with this regret for the rest of his life.
Which fuels the fear, the anxiety, the anger, the dark side. I mean, Palpatine executed this perfectly, and you feel so bad for him. Well, okay, maybe you've already answered it, but since I already have, I'll ask you this time. What did all of this mean to you? How did it change your point of view of Star Wars or Vader?
I think I've covered it, but essentially, first of all, it made Revenge of the Sith a much more impactful story.
1000%.
It also gave like new insight into all the characters, but especially Anakin. And especially like the Anakin-Vader relationship.
Yeah.
I understand it more. This relationship is very much the Anakin-Vader relationship that they're trying to do in the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah.
Where it is...
They're kind of building on it.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to, what is it? It's been 40 years? Oh, God. 40 years since Return of the Jedi, since he removed his mask and you saw his face for the first time. For the first time, I truly feel like Anakin's inside the armor and that he's a character within Vader, or Vader's a character within him. And I like that. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it made me think so much more broadly about these characters and about the events. Yeah.
Beautifully said. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better. No, truly, I thought that was very well summarized.
And now it's time for Matthew Freeman's Ahch-To Baby. Matthew is a friend of the show and the author of the extremely enjoyable newsletter Ahch-To Baby. You can find the link in the podcast notes or go to matthewfreeman.substack.com.
Hi, I'm Matt Freeman, and this is Peace. Star Wars is an anti-war story, which was originally published on my newsletter Ahch-To Baby on October 19th, 2023. In this time of real pain, real war, writing about fictional war can feel tone-deaf, even ill-advised. One would never want to trivialize the heartbreak and tragedy that's going on in Ukraine or in the Middle East by comparing them to stories with robots and rubber puppets. I'm a writer, nothing more, so I won't pretend to understand how to resolve the unresolvable. I think, though, it's a good time to note that Star Wars is, perhaps ironically, an anti-war story. It's a story about resolution through redemption, not victory through vengeance. Star Wars might not seem like a natural messenger for an anti-war ideology, but it's in the plain text of the story. Star Wars is a saga about how evil creates conflict in order to gain power, how war compromises the best in us, and how the only way to truly triumph over darkness is to reject hatred. Control is not the path to peace. It's the path to oppression. Peace cannot be imposed by force. It must live within each of us. We have to choose it. Hatred leads to the figurative death of the self and the literal death of others. The Clone Wars, for example, exist to corrupt the Republic and transform it willingly into the Empire. Even though there are seasons upon seasons of stories of heroes in the war, George Lucas understood that in the Clone Wars, if there are heroes on both sides, evil is everywhere. The war in and of itself is evil. It's an invention of the Sith, secretly guiding both sides of the conflict. Even good people, participating for what they think are the right reasons, are diminished by joining in the fight. That's what Luke realizes when he throws down his weapon and refuses to let his anger define him. That's why Rey defies the Emperor with the words, "All you want is for me to hate, but I won't, not even you." It's why Queen Amidala did not want to condone a course of action that could lead her people to war, and why Senator Amidala fought the Military Creation Act. It's what Rose means when she says, "It's not about fighting what we hate, it's about saving what we love." The most daring thing in the Star Wars ethos is the insistence on redemption for the irredeemable. It's not easy to forgive those who have done unspeakable harm, or hope that there is good in a person somewhere underneath an adversary. There's good in him, says Rey, says Luke, says Padme, of characters that have tried to kill them, that have caused terror. In real life, this can feel impossible. Some people feel unforgivable. But without an honest, radical attempt to see the humanity in everyone, we can never find resolution or peace within ourselves. That's what these stories are about. If we love the stories, I hope we'll let their hope for peace be ours too. And if you're reading this or listening to this, I hope you're taking good care of yourself, taking breaks, and taking care of others.
So that is what Revenge of the Sith means to us, but we'd love to know what you think. Does the novelization really clarify the fall of Anakin for you? Would you like to see more new stories set in the Legends universe prior to the re-canonization by Disney?
So get in on the conversation. You can reach us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U. And next week, we talk to Cavan Scott, the author of Star Wars The High Republic comics, of Darth Vader's Castle, and Star Wars The High Republic The Rising Storm.
Oh, it was such a good interview. I can't wait for y'all to hear it.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. And so, may the Force be with you.
And with you.
Okay, let's start. Okay. Hello there, and welcome to What Does Star Wars Mean? See, I shouldn't have even done WDSWMT.
Okay, I'm loving our secret scenes. It's fine. I thought that was so funny.
It was. Like, every episode's gonna be one of those. And it's just gonna be me doing the opening.
And at the end of the year, we can create a reel, and it's just all of them sliced and supercut. Yeah.
It's going to be an hour long. Okay. Hi, this is Dave. And before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.